Hello, my name is Matt Jacobson. I teach production here at the University of Kansas. I'm also the faculty advisor for KU Filmworks. And today we're going to talk about how to use the ARRI kit. As you can see, a fairly heavy piece of equipment. One of the things that the ARRI Corporation has made a little easier in terms of moving this kit around is the fact that it is on wheels. It also has carry handles on both ends, so if you're going to be carrying it into a situation where you can't necessarily roll it, say upstairs or over rough ground, you want to make sure that you've got at least two people carrying this kit just to make sure that you don't drop it. And inside the kit itself, we have 4 units, 3 of which are Fresnel units. 1 unit is an open face 1K unit. 2 650 watt Fresnel units, and 1 smaller 300 watt Fresnel unit here. Also comes with 4 light stands. These light stands are actually, I think, a little more sturdy than the light stands that you have in your Lowell kits. And it's because these lights are not just lens lights, but by their nature, they're also a little heavier. Now, I'm going to pull out one of the 650 watt lights here, and you can see we've got your standard parts for a Fresnel light. You've got your Fresnel lens. That's the glass lens that's at the front of the unit. You've got the body of the light here. You've got the base of the light, which is usually flattened. That's where all of the mechanism for spotting and flooding the light is kept. The spot and flood knob is here, as well as the base of the actual light itself. ARRI sets up all of its lights so that if you need to access the globe, to change the globe in case it burns out or it accidentally, the filament should accidentally break while you're using the globe, all you have to do is just press in here and the entire unit hinges open. So here you can see the back of the Fresnel lens. That's this glass portion here. Let me open the barn doors so you can see. Here you go. There's your glass lens right there. That glass lens, that Fresnel lens, focuses the light, or allows you to focus the light in either an even beam or a slightly more widespread beam. But it takes all of that light that's coming out of the front of the unit, it focuses the light, and it evens out the light coming through the front of the unit. Now, remember I was talking about spotting and flooding the light? Well, the entire unit that holds the globe in place moves forward and backward to focus the light. There's actually a globe here that you can see, and then there's a metallic, I don't know if you can see that from this angle, but there's a metallic reflector here. Never touch the globe with your bare hands. If you should accidentally touch the globe while you're installing it, you have to clean the globe very carefully with pure isopropyl alcohol before you turn the light back on. If you don't, you run the risk of having this globe explode. So this unit here, this 650 watt light, actually has what we call 4-way barn doors. These barn doors are used to control the light and shape the light coming from the unit itself. You can take the light and turn it into a small slit. You can control where the light spills to the sides of the light. This is very handy if you're going to be lighting someone from the side and you might want to cut the light that's coming in on the back wall. You move the character away from the back wall and you can use the side barn doors to control where the edge of the light hits the frame. Now notice how the power cable for this unit is actually tied off to the side. There's a little tiny piece of rope here that allows you to take this power cable and run it over to wherever your power supply is. It's got an on-off switch. Always, before you power up your light, you make sure of 2 things. If you're going to plug in your light, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to open your barn doors. Now, why do you think we'd be opening the barn doors first before we plug in the light? Well, the barn doors are going to hold in a lot of the heat that's produced by this unit if this should accidentally be plugged in and turned on. Well, if the barn doors are closed, you're not going to see the light. Literally, you're not going to see if the light is burning or not. If you open the barn doors, you could see that the light is burning and take the steps to turn it off. If you plug this in and the barn doors are closed, what you're going to do is you're going to create a lot of heat buildup inside the unit. That heat buildup is going to shorten the life of the globe, and it's going to melt and warp portions of the light itself, including the barn doors. So we're going to make sure that this is off. Now, you might think that that's all that you'd have to do, is just make sure it's off. But you've got to keep in mind that if you're not sure who did the maintenance on this kit last, somebody might have accidentally switched the inputs on this switch so that off is on and on is off. So you always want to make sure that you've got this switched off, but that you've got the barn doors open and that you've got the unit pointed away from people. Because there's nothing that is worse than blinding a bunch of unsuspecting people who are looking at a light, not expecting it to be on. You go plug it in and boom, all of a sudden they're hit in the face with a lot of light. Now notice that I'm not touching any part of the light while I'm plugging in the light. There's an important reason for that, and it's a safety reason. If there's a short, if any of these wires inside the light become loose while the light's being moved or while the light's being moved around, there's a chance that you could end up electrocuting yourself by completing a circuit between the switch and the light itself. There, see? Now I can see that the light is working. I can see that the light is on. I can just as easily turn it off. Now notice I'm only holding the switch in one hand and I'm not touching the light at all. If there was an electrical short, there'd be the potential for a buzzing or a sizzling sound and the light would flicker. That's a good symbol, or that's a good sign that what you need to do is turn the light off immediately, unplug it, move it to the side, and make sure that you tell someone that you're having that trouble with the light when you return it. Don't try and fix it in the field unless you know what you're doing. So I'm going to turn this on. There we go. And now can you see that light pattern over there? Good. That's an example of a Fresnel light pattern. Now that's actually a pretty spotted pattern. As I turn this knob from spot to flood, you can see that the spread of the light becomes much larger, much wider as we go into flood. And we can spot the light. Now keep in mind, this is about 30 feet away, and that back wall is already very nicely lit. But you can see that we're still getting enough light on that back wall to create a sense of light. Now, one thing that's really important is that whenever you're working with lights, you want to make sure that you have a pair of gloves handy, that you want to have a pair of gloves nearby. I don't have a pair of gloves here. I should have brought some. Now, I can do most of the major adjustment for this light by just touching the plastic portions of the light. These knobs that allow us to tilt the light and pan the light are actually made of plastic. This flood and spot control is made of plastic. I can operate most of the major functions of this light without having to touch any of this hot metal, with one exception, the barn doors. And the barn doors do heat up. This light's only been on for a minute or so, and the barn doors aren't really interrupting any of the light. Here, there's an example of how that top barn door can come down and interrupt the light, like so. If this light were on for more than 30 seconds or a minute, I probably wouldn't want to touch these barn doors unless I was wearing gloves. We're going to tilt and pan the light until the light is focused directly on the subject. Or if we've got two subjects that are seated across from each other, it's pointed between the two subjects. Spot, aim, flood. We're going to flood the light until we have as much intensity as we need to get the exposure that we need. And trim, where we use the barn doors to cut the light so that it's only lighting the areas of the subject that we want to light. See, now I'm able to keep most of the light off the background while still lighting my primary subject. Safety. Spot, aim, flood, trim. And that's the way you set up any light. Whenever you want to attach a piece of diffusion or some other material, gel, to the front of the unit, what you can do is go into the top of the light kit, and here we have pieces of diffusion, we have pieces of gels, we have other things that you can use to modify or change the amount of light coming from the subject. In this case, we're putting up diffusion, which is going to diffuse the light coming from the unit. It's going to soften the light coming from the unit. Remember to always use C47s, clothespins, to attach gels and diffusion to the front of the unit. You never want to use tape, you never want to use metal attachments or metal clips.